Hello, everyone. This is Martha from the Academic Support Center, and today's presentation, this presentation is on perfectly imperfect ways to improve our study skills. Especially during this time, sometimes finding the best way or better ways to do things can make this time a little easier. So, what are we going to start? What are we going to talk about today? We're going to start off with the basics of any good study habits. We're going to talk about what layering is and how it can help us process information and develop a more intuitive understanding. We're going to be talking about the dreaded time management, some strategies for active reading, and specifically with reading a textbook, because sometimes if we do it a little bit differently, it's a great way to help our brains understand things. We're going to be talking about different ways to take notes and the importance of celebrating achievements. So what are the basics? Listening to experts. There's a lot of different voices out there, and knowing who we can trust is important. But one of the most basic things is to take care of your health. Eat as healthy as you can. Practice good sleeping habits, positive mental health, and maintaining a schedule or routine, which is difficult. So that's the basics. Now we're going to talk about layering. Layering is a technique that helps our brain recognize what's important. So when we sleep, our brains do this thing called synaptic pruning. Basically, we get infinite overload all the time. Our brains process and say, okay, I haven't seen that often, let's get rid of it. So it gets rid of it. And oftentimes with studying, we're like, oh, I just studied this, what happened? Now I don't remember it. Well, it's synaptic pruning. But we can also use this to our advantage to develop a more intuitive understanding. And so I'm going to draw on here if it will let me. I'm going to draw a shape, and I want you to tell me what that shape is. That's something that we've probably all seen, a lot of star. Now this is a circle. Because we've seen these things over and over again, our brains recognize them instantly. And what about this? X squared plus y squared equals 1. Well, what's that? This is actually the same thing as the circle. It's just a special circle. And this is recognized, the more repetition that you have, the more exposure you have with this, that's how your brain picks it up. And I like to explain this as it's similar to decorating a cake, building a bookshelf, anything. If we take a look at this pretty awesome cake right here, let's think about the steps that went into making this. First, you've got to make the cake and the ingredients, then there's layering in between, then there's sculpting, and then there's something called a crumb coat, and then there's fondant work, and it's a lot of different steps. Or if the cake artist tried to just smash everything together at the end, it would not work so well. And we can apply this to our learning as well. Applying thin layer after thin layer or step after step really helps our brain learn, retain, and apply information. So how do we do this thing of layering? And you'll probably be sick of hearing me talking about layering by the end of this presentation, I can promise. So a few methods on how we can do this. Incorporating the senses is one of the first. In technical terms, like we talk about, this is something called modalities. The more ways, the more avenues our brain has to learn something, the easier it is for it to grasp. So incorporating the senses could be incorporating touch, where we're writing notes instead of just listening, or movement can be very important, especially people who seem to be athletically inclined. This helps them a lot. With practicing vocab, toss a ball back and forth with somebody where you talk things through. You might be surprised at how much it helps those concepts to stick. For me, what was really helpful sometimes was watching videos while I was working out on a cardio machine, because I couldn't surf the internet. And I had visual, I had audio, and I had movement associated with my learning. And I know that this is helpful for a lot of other students as well. So incorporating your senses, whatever ways work for you during this time. And then meaningful repetition. Meaningful repetition isn't just hearing it over and over again. It's engaging with it. It's questioning the material, but doing so frequently. And one of my favorite ones is what I call before and after. So before class, you get a little exposure to it. You don't have to understand it completely, but you get a little exposure to it. Then you have class, and now it's either a live stream or a recorded video. And so you've got class, and then after class, shortly after, review your notes, get some more exposure to it. Then you've got 3 layers, 3 times of telling your brain this is important and what to remember. So before class, reading a section of the book, watching a video, something. After class, reviewing your notes, work on the paper outline or practice problems, whatever you need to be doing. So now we're going to talk about time management. And the truth is schedules vary, and right now it is difficult. Not just because our schedules are upturned, but also sometimes people we live with things, it can get a little sticky managing those schedules. Recognize that schedules vary. Take some time to look at what you've got going on and where you can dedicate some time for your study, for your learning. The second is set up a schedule and dedicate a workspace. Neuroscience tells us it's maybe not the best to study where you sleep, but sometimes that's what we've got. So analyzing your schedule, setting up chunks of time, saying during this time I'm going to be working on my schoolwork, and having a dedicated workspace. The next is especially important for online learning as we're switching over to online learning. Log into your course or courses frequently and look ahead at what you're going to be doing. Talk with other students. We use Canvas, and leave comments. Reach out to your professor saying, hey, if there's something I'm not understanding, maybe ask for a little clarity. But logging into Canvas and logging into your courses helps your brain stay engaged, and it helps you say, oh, I've got this coming up. Now, the last part for time management, or for concepts of time management, is beware the motivational trap. Have you ever had a time where you're like, oh, I can get to that tomorrow, no problem. Yeah, me too. Most of us don't usually get to it tomorrow. So work on things while you've got the time. And it is difficult. It is one of the hardest things with time management. Next, we're going to talk about a specific technique that is really beneficial for helping us make the most of our study time that we have. So, and this method is known as the Pomodoro method. It just means a tomato in Italian. And it was created in the 80s when these little tomato timers were pretty popular. So there are steps to this. You plan what you're going to work on and what you need to study. You set a timer. Start with 25 minutes. Then when that timer is up, you give yourself a reward, something that is legitimately a reward for you. Scrolling through feeds, playing Candy Crush, walking the dog, something that gives you a break. And after 3 or 4 of these sessions, reward yourself with a longer break. So an example of this might be looking at what you've got to do. You've got a paper and some math homework, and you've got 2 hours to study. The paper is going to take you longer than the math homework. And so you're going to set 2 Pomodoro sessions aside for the paper. And then you're going to do a Pomodoro or Pomodoro session for math. So you look at what you need to do on your paper, then you set a timer for 25 minutes, you've turned off all your notifications, and you just focus on that paper for 25 minutes. And when that timer is up, disengage, let it go. Take 5 or 10 minutes to refresh, to do something that is genuinely enjoyable. And then you're giving your brain some time, you're refreshed and ready to go for that next 25 minutes of working on your paper. And it might be surprising the progress that you can make, and it takes time to build this up, but in those 25 minutes, just dedicating yourself to just that can really help. So you've done these 2 sessions, you've made a lot of great progress on your English paper, and now you've got to work on your math. And you do the same thing. And after 3 or 4 of these sessions, you give yourself a break. Maybe take 20 minutes and do something that is fun. So that's time management. Oh, now we've got layering. So layering, I promise you might be sick of this. So what have we talked about so far? The basics of getting good night's rest, healthy habits as much as we can, practicing mental health. Those are key and crucial right now. The concept of layering, of helping tell our brain what's important, and specifically ways to do that. With time management, we talked about some general things, and then that technique of using chunks of time to really focus your study. And give yourself a reward. Building that positive cycle really helps with studying and study motivation too. So next, we're going to talk about active reading and reading a textbook. So with active reading, there's some key elements that are pretty, just boiling it down. There's a lot of different discussions on ways to actively read, and this is just how I talk about it. The first is you break it piece by piece, take it chunk by chunk. You mark it, where you make notes, you annotate, and then recall, look away, and try and summarize what you've just read. Sometimes we're like, when we're reading, we're like, oh, we get this, and then we look away and we're like, wait a second. But this recall strategy can be extremely powerful. And this last technique with active reading, we could do a whole presentation on why this helps, but try teaching it to someone else. It's really amazing how much we can grasp a subject better when we have to explain it to someone else. That someone else could be you in the mirror. It could be someone in your class. For me, with 2 of my math classes, my dog learned a lot of math. He didn't really care. He got a lot of treats. But for me, it was so helpful to take this information that I thought that I understood and recognize, okay, that I didn't understand as well. And so these are parts of active reading that really help engage with the material. And with active reading, sometimes the best thing is an example. So this is a kind of a dense passage. I'm pretty typical of what we might find in our textbooks. And so, or in journal articles we have to read. And so what we're going to do is we're going to circle words we don't know, because that happens. Sometimes there are words we're like, what does that mean? And then we're going to take notes as we go along. So I'll read it out loud. Again, another sense of, instead of just in my head, I hear it. So it's auditory. Tin is a metal found in nature in its oxidized form, as the mineral called cassiterite. So I'm going to say Cass becomes tin. Tin, I can spell. There we go. And nature. Cass in nature. And Cass, whatever, has been the primary source of tin throughout history and remains the primary source of tin today. So tin, mostly from Cass. Small amounts of tin are also recovered from sulfide minerals such as stantonite. Okay. Some tin. I don't know what, there we go. From, what's that one? Stan. We're going to say Stan. / sulfide. So I've read 3 sentences. I know that this Cass mineral in nature is where we get tin, and it's mostly from this, but there's some from this sulfide mineral as well. So Cass is found in alluvial deposits and can be found in lode deposits in association with other metallic minerals. Okay, alluvial can be kind of a tricky